My name is Joanne Brown-Kerr from Banmain West Community Cluster, and we're absolutely delighted to be involved with this Linen Heritage project in partnership with the Frazer family. I was approached a year ago, maybe slightly more, by William Frazer about looking at what we could do really to look at the memories of people who used to work in the factory, but also as well there's a lot of material that had been left over from the factory and really looking at what we could do with that material. We looked at the different elements, and the different elements of this project have been using the material which has been left over to recycle it and make it into products which are now being sold in a community shop in Cullebackey area. And also we have and continue to record interviews with people who used to work in the factory about their memories of the factory. So we've been absolutely delighted with the project, and we would see it as the start of really a number of different ideas that we have to continue to look at the importance of the linen industry in this area.
I'm Andrew Frazer. My father was Mr. Jack Frazer, and my great-grandfather was J.W. Frazer. And he was one of the first partners here of Frazer and Haughton. The business of bleaching cloth at Hillmount started in 1720 or thereabouts, when John Hill married Martha Dickey from Lowtown, just outside Cullebackey, and he established a linen bleaching facility at Hillmount. And the reason that it was placed here was because of the water that was used both for power and for process. The Hills flourished for about 100 years, but unfortunately something went wrong and they ended up going bankrupt. And the title deeds were signed in Carrickfergus jail to the new purchasers, who were members of the Young family. And the Young family in Ballymena, bigly involved in the linen industry, and they occupied Hillmount for about 50 years. Eventually they had no heirs and they ran out of steam, and they very decently sold the business to my great-grandfather and T.W. Haughton. These were two young men who'd met in America, and they'd become friends. Frazer and Haughton started off as a relatively small business, and as you can see from this picture here, that it developed very quickly with new processes and new products. One of those products was the making up department called the Frazerton being half Frazer and half Haughton, and they made up aprons and surgical gowns and overalls that were exported overseas.
When I left school at 14, I started work in the latter part of 1949, and I worked there until 1956. I loved my work in Hillmount, and I worked there for the 6.5 years. I was in the making up department doing the garments. We did smocks and frocks and skirts and blouses and cook's trousers and all that different things. 12 o'clock in the day we had half an hour of music and singing, and when you heard the whole factory singing together, it was marvellous. They had a good choir, and I loved that part of it. We started at 8 o'clock and we had 3 breaks during the day. We had a tea break, and then we had a lunch and another break in the evening, and I think we finished at 6 o'clock. It was a long day, and during the winter time it wasn't easy to be there and work all day and go home in the evenings on the slippy roads. But we liked it anyway. All during the day we had different machines. You know, I was on an ordinary sewing machine, but there was felling machines and buttonhole machines and button-on machines, and there was people doing the ironing and people doing hand stitching. Parts of the garments had to be done with hand stitching. And then there was the times we went down for tea and that, we usually walked down through the bleach. We liked to walk down through the bleach because that's where all the nice young fellas were working. And there was the odd skirmish, you know, people falling out and things like that. That brought a bit of glamour to the job. But anyhow, everything went well anyway, and you were glad to hear there was a horn outside and it would go at 6 o'clock. And everything was down tools then and you were ready for home.
I
I came to Frazer Haughton's just after leaving school, about 15. My father had worked there previously, and my aunt and my sister all worked in the factory. And I started there, as I say, after school. And in the cutting room manager then was Lawrence Harkness, a very, very good man to work for. And I started off laying up the cloth on a hooking frame, they called it. And then gradually I went to mark out the patterns on paper, and then they were stapled onto the cloth. In later years they had a trolley which run up and down a table and laid up to maybe 50, 100 deep, and then the cutter came along with the ballard knife and he cut round the patterns, and then it went to the band knife for all the smaller pieces, and it was then put through to a lady. She sorted out all the parts and put them onto the floor. There were straight knives, the straight blade on them, it cut round them, and the band knife was two wheels, top and bottom, and a continuous blade right round. They sharpened it with a special sharpener.
My name is Marion and Caro, and I'm owner and founder of Titanic Denim. Basically what I do is take jeans and reclaimed denim and transform them into new products. My company also have various projects called rescued projects where we recycle other materials from industry, and this project that we worked on together with BAM West Community Cluster Hub is another rescued project. I was approached by International Synergies to connect with William Frazer from Frazer Haughton because he had a store full of fabrics that had been sitting there for a long time after the company had gone into liquidation. So this was a very exciting opportunity for me to go along and meet William to see what fabric was there and what the potential use for this could be. The initial idea was that I myself as a designer would transform the materials into different products, maybe for commercial use as merchandise, corporate products, but having seen the amount of fabric that was there, it would have been such a big project for me to do alone. I suggested to William that perhaps could we make this into a bigger project, and immediately William thought that that was a great idea, so he reached out to Joanne from the Community Cluster Hub in Cullybackey, and we arranged to meet with her. Meeting with Joanne and Margaret, initially we had thought of making products from the fabric, and then after more meetings we thought, well look, why can't we bring the community together to be part of this project and potentially do something that they could continue on their own. And that's exactly what we did. We reached out to the local community and we got a number of people together to run workshops. My sister and myself designed workshops suitable for the fabrics where the participants from the local community could come together and make the products that would then be sold in the Community Cluster Hub, and then that money goes back into the community. It was absolutely amazing. The workshops were phenomenal. Everyone who took part in the workshops had an absolutely great time. Many of them were new to using sewing machines, so we were able to transfer our skills and teach them how to use a sewing machine and to make products for the first time in their life. There were other participants who were exceptional, and so we all worked together as a team. The plan behind the initial project was to pass on new skills to enable the participants who took part in all 8 workshops to carry on the project on their own. So they would create a small team where they would then become the trainers and the leaders of the next project. So a great project with heritage, recycling, people coming together, new skills, and a circular project literally bringing everything together and going back into the community. We were only able to do this with the absolute fantastic support from the Community Cluster Hub, William Frazer, and also from 4 Gears, who were incredible at taking all the footage and doing all the interviews.
So I guess I came back here 5 years ago now. This place has always been a diversified business in a way. For several hundred years it was very much weighted onto the linen industry. I think in a way what we're trying to do today is not much different to what we've done in the past. Basically the natural geography of our situation at Hillmount is on a bend in the river with a big fall, and so we're naturally able to produce a lot of water power, and the future I think really looks like how do we commercialise that in new ways compared to what was done in the past. In a way what we've done to start with is get our boots on the ground with the land and the property and the farm in particular. We've bought a fair bit of that back in hand and looking to get that up and running to provide an additional source of income, and we continue to generate a lot of electricity on the River Main through the water turbines. I think in a way though the priority in my head coming back here has always been recognising the past. There's such a big history here. We're surrounded in this room, in the buildings and all of the properties around the Hillmount Road. And so a really important thing has been getting to a place where we can preserve that history and all of the ingenuity and energy which went into building such a big industry in the linen industry in Northern Ireland and its place here on the River Main in Callibachy. And so one of those moves has been to try and get this project up and running so that we can start getting some of the stories that are left retold, but also start looking at some of the machinery that is left. There is not much of it left. We are working on another separate project to try and restore some of those machines with the hope that we will be using our water power once again to power machines which will produce Northern Irish textiles. The rest of the plan for the future, the big focus is the old Frazer and Haughton site, and we would love that to be working on, I guess, a number of missions which I view as important for our generation. And also, you know, we have 3 kids. There's a lot of youngsters starting to grow up in this part of the world and thinking ahead to their challenges which they're going to be facing. And a big one for me is climate change and how we're going to be adapting to it. In a way, I think there's room for food production and homegrown food, returning textiles from the Far East back to homegrown textiles, and all sorts of other ways, whether it's renewable energy or how we heat our homes in a more efficient manner. I'm hoping that the site will once again become home to businesses and enterprises and people who want to work in that space. A second key mission for me, and a lot of people questioning their route to work because technology is taking jobs away from a lot of people. I think there's a massive need to get people back into the world of work where you make and produce things at a primary level again. We're still quite close to that in Northern Ireland and we can't let it all go. And I guess the third bit is this part of the world in Northern Ireland through the Industrial Revolution was largely flattened in order to make space for industry and for such an expansive and exciting growing business. Now in the 20 years in which this site has been, I guess, left, nature has taken a big hold on the footing of the 2-mile stretch of the River Main around the Frazer and Haughton site. That is something that we're really keen to protect and preserve as we go forward. But none of it's going to happen without people. And I hope this exercise can be a bit of a launch pad for bringing people back into the site and applying their energy and intelligence to how we might make it tick again.
I would like to take this opportunity then to thank in particular the Frazer family for working with us on this project, also to Titanic Denim, to 4 Gears Production Company, to everybody who contributed to this project so far, and also to our funders, the Heritage Lottery funding, without which we wouldn't have been able to do this project.